Can and Will Do: The Philosophy of Possibility, Determination, and Success by Eric Leo. Read by Eric Leo. Chapter 1. Introduction. Practical Philosophy Applied. Welcome to your future dive into success. It has been waiting for you. In this book, you will learn the simple philosophy of can and will do, its origins, and its practical applications. Because it's a pragmatic philosophy, I will tell the story of can and will do from my personal perspective and use common examples to illustrate my point. These themes include building a business, becoming a music artist, losing weight, building muscle, and how to change society for the better. I will apply this philosophy to my life to illustrate how this simple maxim has affected my life for the better. Before I was mentally ill for 7 years, where I was in psychosis with schizophrenia, I was in incredible shape, so I know how to build muscle. Since then, I have become obese and have lost 50 pounds twice, so I know about weight loss. I took classes in college and was a business, finance, and accounting major at Grand Valley State University before transferring to Eastern Michigan University, where I got my bachelor's in sociology. I got an A in accounting and an A in college algebra. As of 2024, I am an artist with 60,000 listeners on Spotify. This book complements my first book, 108, The Story of Discovering Earth's Consciousness, in that it is the philosophy I used to invent my theory of knowing. I reverse engineered knowing, or the voice in my head that claims to be Gaia. I used can and will do to gather the evidence and explain my intuition and formulate a theory. I said, the planet is conscious and communicates. Then how? The 108 book was published in 2020. Since then, I have become a public hip-hop artist with hundreds of tracks and thousands of followers that has been releasing twice a month since April 2022 on a $300 a month budget. I may not be the most successful, but I've been through hardship and have experience overcoming those obstacles to build the momentum that brought you this book, which is 20 years in the making. I remember originally telling this maxim to my best friend in 2012, and I wrote the basis of the book in 2019. Can and will do is just as it sounds. It's Occam's razor of possibility, determination, and success. Can and will do's complexity is masked by this simple maxim. The concept of can and will do is built off of Arthur Schopenhauer's The World as Will and Idea, where the will to do something is a strong drive to overcome. It's put so simply intentionally, but is made of the physical, mental, spiritual, and cumulative will. This book is a collection of philosophical principles, scientific findings, examples, and conclusions derived from those experiences. I will talk about the science of can and will do and build on the works of other scientists and philosophers. I discuss mental, physical, and spiritual will that stresses individuals and the cumulative will, similar to Jean-Jacques Rousseau's general will, that drives groups. At the end, I postulate philosophically about the ultimate will. Unlike most philosophers, I try to make my philosophy as understandable as possible. This is no ethereal Kantian moral logic. I specifically chose to write about this philosophy because it has practical applications. Here you will learn the practical application of losing weight, building muscle, financial discipline, and starting a business, especially as applied to being an artist, while learning the philosophy and applying it to the music industry and society. As an example, considering obesity as a growing worldwide problem and epidemic in America, it's important to read this book to understand how to effectively protect yourself against self-sabotage and self-inflicting limitations. By following its principles, this book will change your life if you allow it. Before even asking can, you should ask, should I do this? Which is a whole other question entirely. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Should is a moral question. You have to ask the question, what will this produce? Is this a desirable outcome? Can and will do means if you can do something, That is the necessary prerequisite that you have in order to will it. In order to assess the can, you have to think of the possibility, which largely comes from your ability to imagine as a source of will your way to that possibility. Can is about physical ability and a mentality of accepting the seemingly unattainable as possible. You have to think you can in the first place to be able to will it. A large part of the can is the ingenuity of the will. In order to innovate and advance properly, you have to find what is true and real. Part of the can is being able to think correctly. Can takes courage to face the thought of the obstacle, while valor is the action of performing that courage. Part of the can is to explore possibilities. Possibility leads to determination, which leads to success. Will. For a better understanding of why having ideas and dreams is so important to success, read Think and Grow Rich. The fact is, can is all about thought and how that thought takes effort. Many people don't have the will to think of a great idea, which is why they have to have the idea of a dream or goal to reach that will make your life heavenly to you. As Neil deGrasse Tyson would say, quoting Mark Twain, get your facts straight and then distort them at your leisure. In the same way, you think before you act and then have fun while you execute the task. Webster's sixth definition of will is used to express determination, insistence, persistence, or willfulness, which is the one I am referring to. Using can and will do, you can apply this maxim to any task. Once you have decided you should, you assess whether you have the capabilities, and then, if you do, ask yourself if you have the drive and determination to complete the task. Like we will discuss with my music career, everyone wants to be an influencer, and most people can do it. The problem is the will. Most people don't have the mental clarity to create, let alone have the will to create content and post once a day to multiple platforms. That's why you hire someone or learn how to batch your content. If you don't have the will, you have to reevaluate the can. Like in this case, I don't have the will for content creation, or it affects my ability because of my mental illness. I may ask, can I afford to hire someone to do the job? Or can I do the content less often, but in batches? If I don't have the money to hire someone, the question becomes, do I have the capability, in other words, can and will, to work another job to pay for this service? As we will discuss, this is where it comes down to the environment, which will either make the will harder to achieve or easier to obtain. In my case, I live on disability, which has rules. To make a long story short, my labor power is exploited for healthcare in America, so I'm limited on the amount of money I can make and keep my healthcare. This means my country, the United States, affects my can. As we will discuss, your environment plays arguably the largest role in the outcome of your future. No man is an island. Sometimes the conditions of your environment make it unlikely for your success. Many times, it's not that you don't try, but that you try so hard and can't keep it up, so you end up failing. This is the case with both losing weight and financial mobility in America. If you make the diet too hard, basically you'll relapse and won't lose any weight and get into the dreaded binge restrict cycle. And if you don't get a high enough paying job to make ends meet, because minimum wage is not a living wage, you will get burned out and or become sick, both of which are environmental and tax your will. You can do it, but the amount of will it takes and the conditions created make it highly likely you will fail. This makes the journey a burden and unenjoyable. As you will learn, this is what the philosophy illuminates and tries to fix by reevaluating the can to ease the will. To be clear, I wouldn't have the economic problems I do if I lived in another Western country other than the United States, which all have universal health care. America affects my can so much that it burdens my will to the point the actions required need so much effort it will prolong my time until success, make such success unobtainable because the work won't be good enough from my skill set alone or burden me to the point of financial ruin, which, as we will discuss, can also be applied to the idea of can and will do. Due to weak to no social programs, the tax code, and unlivable wages, in a very real way, America's economic system, with its inequality, increasingly doesn't allow Americans to do much because they cannot afford it. It takes extraordinary will to be successful, and increasingly in American society creates the conditions in which you can do it, but the burden is so great it's unlikely you will succeed. By rigging the tax code and stagnating the minimum wage without social programs, along with unaffordable prices, in this way, the oligarchy, through the Republican Party, has taken away the average American's political and economic representation, so the country doesn't work/support/enable the can for regular people. In my discussion on the cumulative will, I build off Rousseau's general will from the social contract. For more, visit farminghumans.com. Will requires courage, and courage leads to valor. Yet courage isn't something you start with. It's what you learn by enduring hardships and realizing they were never as fearsome as they seemed. True bravery emerges not from the absence of fear, but from confronting it and discovering your own strength. In the end, valor is not given, but forged in the fire of perseverance. There is an ancient example of this in the history of Western civilization in the Greek city-state of Sparta. The Spartans were bred and raised for war. They would consistently train so hard that they would be relieved to go to war, which would be like a vacation compared to their training. The Spartans' will was greater than any other, which is why they were the most feared fighting force in the world. And the whole nation of Persia was stopped by 300 Spartans in the Battle of Thermopylae. Do is success, can is the start, will is the process, and do is the finish. Then you repeat. Your will is part of your imagination. It's limitless. Can is logic, and do is self-expression. Can is left brain, and will is right brain. Do is both. Can is realism, will is idealism, and do is pragmatism. The scientific method is a great example of can and will do. Measure, test, and repeat in different variations. Can is the measure, will is the test, and do is the repeat. Philosophy looks to science for answers and imagines the future based on reasoned intuition. If can and will do were a school, can would be philosophy, math, physics, and economics. Will would be art, gym, and engineering. And do would be business or sports. Physics uses math to teach the limitations or expansiveness of the natural world. Art is your imagination expressed through ethics. Business can execute service and create efficiently and effectively, repeatedly, and sports are an application of your ability, can, and drive, will, to succeed, do. Throughout the rest of the book chapters, we will explore the philosophy of can and will do, its origins, the physical will, the mental will, the spiritual will, the cumulative will, willpower, examples of do, help define our purpose, explore how this is related to Rousseau's general will, apply the philosophy to global warming, and find the meaning of life through the formula. In Chapter 3 and beyond, I apply can and will do to being an entrepreneurial artist and discuss how to gain muscle and lose weight in Chapter 4 about the physical will. I hope you will come on the journey with me and build your own life around this simple maxim to better yourself. I hope it brings you to your goals and you continue to achieve. Can and will do. The Philosophy of Possibility, Determination, and Success by Eric Leo. Read by Eric Leo. Chapter 2. The philosophy of can and will do. Being determined is different than determinism. I think of the world as a framework. There are certain things we are determined to do, that no matter how much will we have, we won't break the bonds of our fate. You are determined to have a birth, to eat, breathe, sleep, defecate, and seek shelter. You can't fly under your own power. You can't swim underwater for an extended period of time without tools or chemistry. And although we're thinking about it as a species, we can't live on Mars. And outside of our solar system isn't even worth contemplating. It's so inconceivable. However, within those limitations that we're determined, we can use our will to make our life, environment, and planet a pretty awesome world. You can use a plane to fly in the air or a submarine in the water instead of swimming, which are all expressions of humanity's cumulative will. It may be inconceivable now, but if we work at it, we could develop the technology to live on Mars in another 1,000 years. If we continue the path we are going with global warming, Earth may be uninhabitable before we reach that point. We may never go to Mars as a species if we don't focus on keeping our home planet habitable. It's important for you to figure out what you can do in life so you know your limitations and the possibilities. For the most part, you can do anything you set your mind to, given enough time, especially when we work together as a species. If the obstacles seem insurmountable, like you can't figure out the math or haven't found a successful design, this is where your desires for can and will do come to affect your will and hope. You would have to realize the can, which is learning the math or engineering, and the will, or applying it in real life until you succeed. The process may require you to change the can upon failure, converting your approach while reapplying your will. Hope is a paradox and a necessary part of the will to do. The trick in hope is knowing when it's hopeless or when you can not. Hope is defined as a feeling of expectation and desire for a certain thing to happen, or a feeling of trust. Will is your drive to make what you hope for happen. If there is no hope, walk away. Move on. Come to terms with your limitations and accept it's not for you. This is a humbling but necessary experience. Some people go their whole lives or die trying to achieve a dream that they thought they wanted. Think about climbing a mountain. Some people shouldn't go because of health reasons, but if you go and die or get injured, you didn't properly assess whether you can or not. For perspective, over 340 individuals have died climbing Mount Everest, and many of their bodies are still there. Just like how it's not about the destination but the trip, so should your life not be about the do but the will, or not about the destination but the journey as well. You define yourself in the climb. You define yourself by your will. What you do, the expression of your will, in life, is more important than who you are. The expression of your will and what brought that to fruition will define who you are more than any title. Will makes up your character, and people want to know your character. You are known for your will. Donald Trump is a president and billionaire, who he is, but he doesn't pay taxes, what he does, and has been impeached. R. Kelly is a hit music maker, who he is, but is a sex offender, what he does. Nikola Tesla was a broke immigrant, who he is, but created AC current that makes modern life possible, what he did. Bill Nye is an engineer, who he is, but made a hit show about science, what he did. Oprah is a billionaire, who she is, but got there and is known for being a talk show host, what she did. However, what someone does is often why they have the title. Jonas Salk is a scientist, who he is, that found the cure for polio and gave it away for free, what he did. People don't remember Jonas Salk for being a scientist. That's consequential. They remember him for curing polio and giving it away for free when it could have made him exorbitantly wealthy. It is the same with Donald Trump. He is president, but what kind of president is he? Even if you lose all your money, you still have your reputation. Even if you lose the job title, you still have what you did. No one can take away your works/legacy. People don't talk about the single championship ring Jordan won. They talk about how Jordan made the game-winning three-pointer in Game 6. Through your will is how you will be remembered. Can and Will Do. The Philosophy of Possibility, Determination, and Success by Eric Leo. Read by Eric Leo. Chapter 3. Evaluating the Can. Don't do music for the money. The following are examples of evaluating the can in music entrepreneurship while relating it to pluralistic ignorance and society. Honestly, the key to being successful in the music industry is not getting a hit, although it would help. The real test will be how many years you can stay consistent with your output and audience, often with little to no recognition. It may be 3 months, it may be 3 years, it may be 30 years, but your career will only last so long. As the Creative Juice podcast would put it, it's all about consistency over time. It's more about a body of quality work rather than one banger. Don't get me wrong, a hit would help, and you should strive for one once you have a catalog. But without supporting music, you won't have anything to follow up with and sustain the attention. If you blow up on your first song, you'll probably crash and burn and lose all your momentum, usually resulting in a one-hit wonder situation. Russ says it in his song, Exposed. If you have less than 10 songs out, you're not real. What happens when you don't have enough music is that the song becomes bigger than the artist, and you'll never be known as an artist, but rather the song. The question is, what do you want to accomplish? What are your goals? And what is your legacy? I'd think about what you want to do with the money, because it won't be a lot. This is my warning for all of you who are going into music for the money. If you want to be rich, don't go into music. Most people do not make it, and the money you do make is less than you think. According to Chartmetric, only 0.05% of new artists reach the mid-level stage or higher. That's 1 in 2,000. This is addressing the should again because it's about the goal. If you just want to make some songs with your friends and have a good memory, by all means, you can succeed. If you want to get out your message and are willing to pay to spread it and don't care if you lose money, all the more power to you. But if the goal is to make a lot of money, you're in the wrong business. In 2024, independent artists and other master owners received $3.41 per 1,000 streams, which was a slight decline from the previous year. In 2023, 45.6 million tracks had 0 streams, while only 10 tracks had more than 1 billion streams. The global recorded music industry was worth $28.6 billion in 2023. In 2025, Salesforce, the business suite software company, had a market cap of $330 billion. One mid-level tech company's market cap is worth 10 times more than the whole global music industry's yearly revenue. There are other good reasons to do music, like building a brand or marketing, but your money won't come from the music. It will come from ancillary products that are associated with your brand and music. If you're thinking about taking music seriously, I encourage you to release something because you'll probably hear crickets. Even your family and friends won't listen to it, and you'll know that because you'll have little to no plays. People just think you're going to blow up, but the reality is those artists have labels and spend hundreds of thousands on marketing. Don't get me wrong, if you've been on a Disney show, Jake Paul, have your own YouTube channel, KSI, or were a child actor, Connor Price, you'll have an easier time acquiring your audience because you're already familiar to the public to some degree. This does not apply to people who have a career in the entertainment industry. If you've done like a Nickelodeon show, for example, this changes the can because people already recognize your brand, which is your face. This could largely explain Conor Price's wildly successful career. This is a common path to becoming a big artist. Start as an actor and go into music. Example, Drake. This rings true for many people's GOAT, greatest of all time, Tupac, who was a theater major in college. The truth is that 1 in 2,000 really make it, but all you are seeing are the successful artists. It gives the illusion that people are usually successful when it's really just propping up the outliers. To put this in context, this applies to the psychological term pluralistic ignorance, which is a psychological phenomenon where individuals mistakenly believe that their thoughts, feelings, or experiences are different from those of others, despite evidence to the contrary. In the context of artists, aspiring creators may feel isolated in their struggles, thinking they are the only ones facing challenges while observing the success of bigger artists. This misperception may make them think that most artists are thriving and profitable, which in reality is not the case. As a result, the artists may feel inadequate and discouraged, believing that their efforts are wasted compared to the apparent success of others. This disconnect creates a cycle where artists continue to pursue their dreams, often feeling alone in their journey, while the struggles faced by the majority remain hidden behind the facade of success displayed by a few. And artists who are not successful are putting on a facade as if they are. This gives the industry persona that all artists are successful and making money when really the industry is doing the classic fake it till you make it. In the context of the music industry, aspiring artists might see a few successful musicians and assume that success is common or attainable, leading them to overlook the reality that only a small fraction of artists achieve significant recognition and financial success. This mindset can lead to feelings of isolation and discouragement among artists. They might think, everyone is succeeding, so I must be the only one who is not, which can diminish their motivation to pursue their music career. As a result, they may continue to invest time and resources into their music, driven by the hope of breaking through, despite the reality that only a small percentage of artists achieve significant success. This cycle can perpetuate an unrealistic view of the industry, where the struggles of the majority remain hidden behind the success of a few. In terms of sociology, this is the same as the economy. The United States has record profits and is the richest country ever. However, due to inequality, we have a housing and homelessness crisis. It gives the illusion that American society is doing well when tens of thousands are dying from big carbon pollution, healthcare insurance denials, pursuing a genocide against trans people in Palestine, and the growing problem of mass violence. Besides the violence, although we are the richest nation ever, the majority of Americans can't afford to live because healthcare, childcare, education, and housing are all unaffordable, while the minimum wage is not a living wage. People are really suffering, but corporations are making record profits, and the economy is great, so America is too. At least that's what's fed to us by the corporate-run media. Pluralistic ignorance applies here in that many feel alone in their trepidations when the majority are struggling. It's just a small portion that is thriving while having the spotlight, so it seems everyone is doing well when it's really the minority. Meanwhile, the wealth gap in America is larger than it was during the French Revolution. When it really comes down to it, your goal as an artist is to familiarize yourself with your audience, not the public, but your tribe. On average, it takes $150,000 to break an artist and become profitable, and about $1 million to familiarize yourself with your audience, according to Wendy Day. It's either leverage virality on the platforms or you pay for your reach, which the best strategy is a little bit of both. Once you have started a following, you can ask your fans to support you by providing desirable offers that build value. There are many ways to get there, but the cheapest and most efficient way is to run ads on social media. You can pay to go on tour, or you can pay to get radio spins, or you can pay to put ads on social media, which are arguably more effective and cheaper. Either way, you'll be paying for exposure. If you heard all that and still want to be an artist, okay, I'll tell you the formula. Here it is. Release good music consistently through a distributor, make content for those songs on social media, and run ads on that content. Rinse and repeat. This means creating a story in some way that grabs attention with the proper visual aesthetic. Build a community based on your audience's demand. Connect with your audience going directly to the consumer by building traffic sites you own, like a website, funnels, and email list. The truth that no one talks about is that if you want valuable digital music assets, you have to increase the demand for them. But if you are unknown, there is no demand because no one knows you exist. You're playing to an empty room. What this really means is you have to familiarize yourself with your audience, and that's going to take a proficient amount of digital video and audio work, or you're going to need to spend some money on marketing. Both will familiarize yourself with your audience. If you don't have the money, you need to develop related skills that will pay until you can afford to run it like a business, which is the only way you'll survive. Better yet, if you can, start as a hobby and dabble until there is a demand for your product, because remember, it's the long game with the music business. It should also be noted that you have to have good music. If you have bad music and try to connect with people, they won't come back to you, just like with any product. As discussed, in the American economy, even if you're lucky, that luck will run out. Perhaps the can for a music artist is, are you willing to view your songs as digital assets and run your artistry like a business? The other option is to go with a label, and they'll take control and ultimately force you to do what you don't want to make their money back. Or you can keep control and consistency and run it like a business from the get-go and never need them. This is why it's so important to treat your music as a business. You're an entrepreneur, not just an artist. I tell you all this, giving you examples, because these situations and examinations will affect the can. You will have to evaluate if you have the resources or what it will take to get them, whether in music or society. The can will evaluate how much will it may take and how much work you will have to do to achieve your goal. Look, I get it. It's romantic to think that we like musicians for their art. We do, but we don't. We like the packaging, which is the business side. And the artist has to pay to reach us, requiring a return on investment to perpetuate itself. I understand you want to feel something in music that's related to current events that will change your life or perspective, but this is capitalism. You have to own the rights and means of production. Until workers have rights over production as the economic model, artists will be forced to act as entrepreneurs to be successful and known. It takes money to reach your audience, and you get them by paying for marketing. Most don't have the money, so they resort to monetizing their music, treating it like an asset, and investing in its revenue. The business is created by necessity, not desire. Once you've established your income assets, it can be about the art/music, but until you have the money, you're more of a business. It's important to realize that people will try to deter you from your path. They may either have a vested economic interest in stopping or slowing you down, competition, or they may just want the best for you, but are wrong in unknowingly pursuing your downfall. Ignorance loves company. This may affect your can evaluation and will drive toward the goal. This is why it's so important to make a cogent plan and stick to it. It is vital that the scientific method, logic, and history are used to create the can/plan, so you know for a fact that there are no assumptions and the risk is minimized. A big part of the equation is what the goal will be. This can turn a failure into a success and a success into a failure. If we redefine the goal, success may be more obtainable. For example, what if you didn't need a mid-level stage to be successful? What if you could be successful with 1,000 fans? The truth is, you can make a living off 1,000 fans. If you have 1,000 fans and each gives you $100 in a year, you're making $100,000. But if you're going to be a superstar, you're going to have to put in an immense amount of work and run it like a business so you can have the financial apparatus to sustain success. If your goal is to have a small community that supports you, that's going to be a lot easier to obtain than international superstar. It's good to start with small, actionable steps. For example, you have to get to 1,000 fans on your way to being a superstar, but making the ultimate goal more realistic with goals that lead up to it will help you be more successful and satisfied. You could start by trying to get 10 fans, then 50, then 100. In this way, managing expectations and planning small, obtainable goals as stepping stones can be the difference between achieving and obtaining a goal or failing to become a star. It's important to know that in this way, as an example, you can adjust the can to ease the will and make success more obtainable. A great example of goals and failure is Dave. Dave was a guitarist for Metallica in the 1980s, but got fired from the band. He decided he would form another band and made it his goal to outsell Metallica. So Dave started the band Megadeth. Megadeth went on to be wildly successful and a staple in the rock world, reaching a level of notoriety that many can only hope to achieve, selling 50 million records. However, Dave would see this as a failure because he never outsold Metallica, which many know is one of the greatest bands of all time, with 150 million records sold. Dave made the can so great his will couldn't overcome, resulting in failure by his goals, although he has achieved greatly. We'll do another example. When many first start out, they want a record deal. So let's approach your artistry as if that were the goal. First of all, a record deal is a loan you have to pay back with the revenue from your music business apparatus. Second, labels don't buy artists, they buy audiences. So you're going to have to build an audience. And how do you get there? You have to build demand for your music, which is traditionally done through events/shows, radio, or the internet. Shows will cost money to get on stage, radio will cost money to get spins, and social media will cost to run ads or pay for equipment, tools, and editing. Either way, whichever route you pick, you will have to spend money on marketing, but the internet route is the cheapest. I have a $300 a month budget to work with, plus music royalties, which were about $4,200 in 2024. So I've gone the internet route and will be briefly explaining how to reach your audience through social media. I already told you the formula, but it's worth repeating. Put out great music consistently, post content for that music, and run ads on that content. You'll need to be able to write, record, and produce your record. You have to know photo editing to create artwork. You'll need to know how to shoot, edit, and post videos. You'll need to know how to promote on social media and make a posting schedule. You'll need to know how to set up Google Ads and Meta Business Suite and its tools, how to target and run the ad, and how to interpret the data and form a strategy. You'll do all this to give your music away for free, for cents on the dollar, just to get people to hear it, or pay to be considered for playlists or blog placements. You'll have to have the money to outsource the work if you can't do it. Do you see why most artists don't make it? You'll have to do all this, and it still doesn't guarantee success. As a matter of fact, you'll likely have to keep up the work in all these skill sets consistently, improving along the way until you reach your audience. From Chappell Roan to Cato on the Track, it usually takes 10 years to be an overnight success. The good news is all this will help you be successful once you get signed to a record label, because they're going to want their money back, so you're going to have to run it like a business to achieve that goal. The real accomplishment is if you're in that position to attract a label, you probably don't need one and can make it independently and be your own boss. Here's an example of how small but consistent goals can make a difference. TikTok has a 300 play jail. TikTok sends your video out to that size audience to test your video to see if they should send it to more people, and if they watch it, it goes to a bigger group and repeat. While it's hard to get your videos to go viral, so people get stuck with the same number of low views, the truth is that to the average person, 300 plays doesn't seem like a lot. It's way less than the millions Taylor Swift gets, but that's still 300 views or 300 people you reached, even if they don't interact. 500 views times 7 pieces of content per week times 52 weeks is 182,000 views in a year. I've been releasing for 3 years, and that's my goal, and here's why. Out of those 500 views on that one post, if I get one fan out of that post, I'm successful because one fan doesn't stay one fan. They'll tell others. Then those fans tell others, and they'll eventually come back to your content, which will build a community. It's very slow at the beginning, but as long as you have good music and are pushing it with content consistently, the growth is exponential. The other part of doing content consistently is that you will get better and get the suck out, as the Creative Juice podcast would put it. When everyone starts, they suck, until they practice to the point they develop their own polished presentation and style. Photography professor Jerry at the University of Florida did an experiment with his students. The teacher had 2 groups of students. He told one group to go out and take as many pictures as they could and pick the best one. He told the other group to go out and just take one picture, but make it the best picture. It was found that the group that took as many pictures as possible did better because they were able to practice their craft and learn from their mistakes. The same thing should apply in releasing music and making content for it. The reality is that you need to think like a marketer as an entrepreneur and not a musician to be a successful artist. The marketer who does music will do better than the musician who markets. And if the musician does do better, it's because they got lucky, usually through opportunity, or became a good to better marketer with good to better music. The truth is, you have to learn human behavior to understand your audience and how it applies to your music, and every artist will be a little different. Marketers understand how to connect with that individual, understand their wants and needs, and sell them their desires. You need to understand your audience, and you need to become more like a marketer and less like a musician to do so. This is how the average musician can reevaluate the can to become more business-oriented, to be that entrepreneur thinking like a marketer, and to change the will to learn the tools to reach a wider audience instead of playing to the same empty room. The feedback on your music can be relatively silent unless you do shows. Everyone gets hateful comments on the internet, even big artists. It's kind of a universal characteristic once you get into the industry, but unless you set a goal, there may never be a defining moment of this is it, or I made it, or we did it. I posted my 2024 Spotify Wrapped with 60,000 listeners and 235,000 streams, and people were congratulating me, although I didn't see it as an accomplishment. It didn't seem like much to me because my followers haven't moved on Instagram or Spotify, and I'm still struggling to afford to keep up with my budget. I will say it's hard. It's a little more discouraging knowing that it usually takes at least 7 points of contact, sometimes 32, until the viewer hears your advertised message and takes action. This means you have to reach them over and over. This is why your favorite artist on Instagram is always promoting the same track. You have to realize your user's experience. They may like you and never indicate it, other than maybe liking the post. You usually get comments on controversial posts. They might have had to see a short of yours 10 times before they even realize you're an artist, or they like your music. Once they find you, how are you going to follow up with that consumer? That's why you have to have a catalog and release frequently so they have more content to continue that relationship, even if it's a parasocial one. Then, at some point, you have to target your audience and sell them direct-to-consumer products. You do this to raise your ROI, return on investment. Otherwise, you have to depend on streaming money, which, as discussed, is small when compared to the money you can make from ancillary products like tickets or merch. It takes, on average, between 32 and 100 releases to break an artist into the music industry. You'll come to realize that done is better than perfect, and you're probably your own worst critic. I will say that although your music will not make you much money, the business acumen you will obtain and the personal branding, marketing skills, goodwill, and recognition you will gain will help you sell other products and reap larger rewards. Can and Will Do: The Philosophy of Possibility, Determination, and Success by Eric Leo. Read by Eric Leo. Chapter 4: Physical Will, Possibility, Diet, and Exercise. Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world. Archimedes. The physical will is your body's drive to survive and function. Just think about it. You have such strong feelings that you can't contain yourself but to eat, sleep, defecate, procreate, etc. This manifests through bodily pain/discomfort or bodily urges, like when we feel hungry, tired, or horny. The will to feel good physically is with us throughout life. Babies need to be coddled or they die. You feel better after exercising, and your body functions better. Your brain releases natural cocaine, dopamine, for a natural runner's high. You release DMT during dreams. Your body has an automatic will to survive, thrive, heal, and maintain homeostasis. In many instances, like with drugs, the issue starts as mental and turns physical. In The Art of Possibility, Rosamund Zander expands upon how decision-making really works. She explains that neuroscience suggests our understanding of the world unfolds in stages. First, our senses gather fragmented data. Second, the brain constructs its own interpretation of the input, and only then do we consciously experience our surroundings. We perceive only what our senses are designed to detect, and even then, our recognition is limited by the mental framework we've developed. As Richard Gregory noted, our senses don't deliver an object reality. They provide clues that our brain uses to test its assumptions about the world. What we see is never raw reality, but rather our mind's constructed map of it. It's more likely that we're acting on impulse from stimuli in our environment rather than absorbing the data and making a conscious decision about the future. We often act impulsively in response to environmental triggers rather than processing information and making deliberate choices about the future. The automatic reaction, which we mistake for decision-making, appears to be deeply rooted in our nervous system as an evolutionary trait. As Zander describes in Pathways to Possibility, the human brain is structured in 3 key layers, each evolving at different times. The oldest, the reptilian brain, dating back 500 million years, operates on pure instinct, reacting swiftly to perceived threats by triggering fight, flight, or freeze responses. In these moments, our rational frontal lobe shuts down, leaving us operating on autopilot. Meanwhile, the neocortex, the newest part, developing just 2 to 3 million years ago, enables analysis, problem solving, and reasoning. However, it doesn't drive our actions. Rather, it evaluates, predicts, and interprets. Instead, the limbic system, the emotional core that emerged 150 million years ago with mammals and birds, largely dictates our behavior. The emotional center fuels our passions, driving love, conflict, and intense reactions. Ideally, it collaborates with the neocortex to guide us wisely, but it remains the dominant force behind what we do. Our will is encapsulated by taking this information and acting on it based on our evolutionary instincts. And we then justify our actions by saying it was a conscious decision when it's really our stomach and nervous system or spiritual will that drove us to take that action. We are like every other plant and animal on the planet. We have evolved to survive in our environment, which means seeing, identifying, and avoiding or confronting threats in that environment. We don't see the world, let alone the universe, for what it is. We see how it threatens us, or at least stimulates us. In a famous experiment, the Mi'en people of Ethiopia were shown photographs of people and animals for the first time, but could not interpret the two-dimensional images. They responded by feeling the paper, sniffing it, crumpling it, and listening to the sound it made, even biting off small pieces to taste it. Yet in the modern world, we effortlessly equate a photograph with the object it depicts, despite the fact that their resemblance is, in reality, a highly abstract one. This should show that the mind sets limitations, and unless you are taught or shown to see some things, it could be right in front of your eyes and you would never perceive it. When motion video was first released in the theater, people would jump from their seats because they thought the train on the projector was coming toward them and would hit them, for example. Honestly, I could go on, and we have digressed. But I brought you this deep to bring us back to the can. A large part of the can is recognizing possibility, and part of recognizing that possibility is seeing all the avenues of creation and pathways to success, which often means testing and recognizing reality. We test our reality with the scientific method to know what's true. Knowledge is all about what we know, which is growing but still finite, whereas imagination is infinite. Maybe this is what Albert Einstein meant when he said, imagination is greater than knowledge. In a very real way, through ingenuity, you can create your way out of any problem. You just have to master your environment. The mental framework we construct shapes and often limits our sense of what's possible. Every challenge, obstacle, or seemingly impossible situation only feels unsolvable within a certain perspective. Shift the frame, expand the boundaries of thought, and what once seemed like a dead end transforms into new pathways and opportunities. What assumptions are you making? Possibility is about education in order to make use of our senses. The biggest limitation we have is our minds. Math, technology, and science are tools humans use to see, discover, and understand beyond their senses. If you want to control your mind and actually make your own decisions, you have to fuel your mind and body while finding a way to engineer your way out of your problems by being creative and applying knowledge. In terms of evolution, our genes have their own will to survive, which can be understood by reading Richard Dawkins' The Selfish Gene. Evolutionarily, we have thumbs and we can wield tools which allows us to manipulate our world. Although the application of the thumb is physical will, the actual thumb has to do with the can. Due to our thumbs, we can manipulate our environment more intricately than dolphins, who just have a fin. Scientists argue that this is why dolphins don't rule the world like humans, literally because they don't have the finger dexterity to manipulate their environment. We know dolphins are smart enough to manipulate their environment the way they hunt and play, but their can is limited by their own mobility. Physical will is a matter of control, determination, and time. The literal tension of physical will builds strength. Resilience in life is a variable of under tension over time. Even plants need stress to build solid stalks. Otherwise, inside a windless room, they wilt. If you don't know how to work out, like proper form, you'll never build muscle, in other words, control. You have to combine the motion of a muscle group with stress to your muscles at a degree of intensity. As Sam Selleck would say, if you never feel the burn, you won't get the results. You have to keep going through the pain. If you don't do a strenuous workout that taxes your muscles, you will never force your muscles to recover, which is where the strengthening and bulking happens, in other words, determination. And if you don't do it consistently over time, you won't maintain that muscle mass. Just like how we discussed, consistency over time produces results in music. This is why bodybuilders are often more successful than the average person, because they have the stick-to-itiveness, and they can mold and strive for results even when they can't see them right away. Usually, the can in physical will is assessing whether you have any disabilities or injuries that would limit your ability. You can't do Lord of the Dance if you have no legs. But if you have your arms, you could compete in a wheelchair race. You have to assess your ability, because if you don't have the ability, it doesn't matter how hard you try, you will never succeed. But if you can use another tool, and body part in this instance, you can achieve the same or similar results with effort. No one is physically perfect. People have limitations, injuries, and disabilities. But we can use our minds to build tools to train in other ways to still achieve our goals. As Einstein might have put it, you shouldn't judge someone by how well they can do something they're not designed to do, like how well a fish can climb a tree. In business and finance, it's important to assess the can when investing in your future. As with many things, with the can and the will, you often have to work the situation backwards, or at least you should, for better results. An example of this is a career or business move based on an income goal. So, say you want to make $1 million. You have to think, how can I make that kind of money? Well, you won't be making fast food. You look up jobs and you find underwater welding, but you've never welded. Thinking it's impossible is based on knowledge. Use your imagination, which is limitless. You could search for top-paying jobs and choose those. You could be an actor or a DJ. Still not enough money? This would bring you to understand that ownership of a business is the highest paying purveyor of wealth in America. Again, it's capitalism. You will make more money if you have ownership in a successful business. What I want you to realize is that you have to start with the goal first. You should be saying, I want to make $1 million. So how can I do that? Don't go into it with no plan on how to make $1 million. Once you have assessed you can do the job and have the will to continue until you're satisfied or successful, then you work it backwards again. How much money do I have to make per month, per week, per day to make $1 million? That means if you make $19,230 every week, you'll gross $1 million. On average, every day, your business has to make $2,740 to make $1 million a year. Now, what business makes the most millionaires? And where can I make that much money? Real estate. That's a $10,000 contract for 1 week, which you can easily make on one house. The average millionaire has 7 streams of income. For my artist, I look at my songs and books as digital real estate. People want land. There's not enough of it. If you can make people want your product and demand it in the market, you'll have digital real estate. The value of your real estate grows with the number of people who want it. Sometimes it's not that you're not valuable. It's that not enough people know about your product to demand it. And once the market does know, you will have content worth great value. Can is where you set the bar. It's where you want to go. You target your goal and then work it backwards. Will is about how hard you're going to work or how much work it takes for you to hit the mark/goal. If the will costs too much of you, reevaluate the can for a more appropriate application of the will. This is how you work smarter, not harder. Will is the drive to keep training until it is accomplished or done perfectly in the game, performance, event, etc. Physical will is about not giving up in the face of pain or exhaustion. If you don't hit your goals the first 10 times, reevaluate and train until you accomplish it and succeed, even if that means you succeed by breaking it down into smaller accomplishments. Then repeat. That's can and will do. There's physical will exercise, Olympics, and diet, which is really instinctual will, parenting will, mental will, financial, and metaphysical will, longevity, achievements, and awards. Physical will is the drive to express your body to achieve a physical demanding goal, like exercising. The Olympics addresses the can already with the Paralympics. Then once you have accepted your limitations, you can use willpower to achieve your new goal. The ancient Greek philosopher Socrates would say, smart people learn from everything and everyone. Average people learn from their experiences. Stupid people already have all the answers. Reverse engineering, essentially, or working it backwards, is how all education works. This is the whole expressed intent of apprenticeship. A master takes the student under his wing and teaches them how to be proficient and master that skill. Many smart businessmen pay for this type of education. Indeed, it is arguably the best route. You can do it yourself and experiment forever, or you can pay someone who is versed in the craft to tell you how to proceed and save years of time and heartache. Many rightly find the money worth it, and I would agree. Next time you want to do something in life, figure out someone who you respect who does it well, and then go to them and ask them if they would show you how to perfect that skill. As a personal and professional application, writers work it backwards all the time. You start with what you really want to say, usually in a script or lyrics, then you write the rest of it to support that message. That's how all lyric writing works. You start with what you want to say, and then you find words that rhyme with them, and then make a sentence with that word and cogently connect it, and you have bars. Some rappers do all this freestyling, which is why it's so impressive, because you have to build sentences in your mind backwards, from words you want to rhyme with while rhyming. This is also how most jokes work. To make a joke, sometimes you start with the punchline and then think of the line and delivery leading up to it that would make it funny. Dave Chappelle has done a bit before called Punchline from the Fishbowl on Netflix, where he has a fishbowl of punchlines and he'll pick one of them at random and have to make a joke out of it with that punchline. It challenges Dave like it does all artists. As a practical example, most of losing weight is about 80% diet, 20% exercise. To prove this, you could work out like crazy, and if you eat more calories than you expend, you'll gain weight. This is how NFL linemen or sumo wrestlers work. But if you eat in a calorie deficit and don't work out at all, even if it's junk food, you'll lose weight. The goal should be to lose weight in a healthy way by not affecting hormones and homeostasis while maintaining muscle mass. This requires that you have enough fiber and protein in your diet, along with carbs and fats. This will help you feel satiated while losing weight. Protein is key for satiety, making it effective for managing hunger. Consuming adequate protein with meals can help prevent overeating due to feeling full. Protein also plays a crucial role in healthy weight loss and management by supporting metabolism, reducing cravings, and preserving lean muscle mass. Research shows that a diet rich in protein can reduce hunger, boost metabolism, and maintain muscle mass. If you continue to struggle with hunger due to weight loss, maybe you need to increase your protein intake to achieve sustainable results. Instinctual will is the forces that act upon you that come from your genes. You want to touch grass, have kids, live by a large body of water, you're scared of the dark, or rubbing your areolas or gooch makes you horny. Our urges are evolutionary desires that makes us act out that need to carry on our genes. We have a conscious and unconscious will, and the instinctual will is largely unconscious. Try not breathing and you'll pass out, so your body can force you to breathe. You don't think about breathing, you just do it. Your physical will just pushes you. Mental will is a precursor to honing physical will, and they act in tandem to achieve through spiritual will. You're never going to show up every day for the gym if you don't believe you can achieve your goals in the first place, which is why can is so important. You're never going to try to make $1 million unless you have the mindset that the money is obtainable. Then, acting out your commitment, test your will throughout the problems and challenges that arise. Yeah, you might get lucky, but you might get injured and not be able to go to the gym. You might not have the time or money or both to invest in your artist career. You might not be able to afford the education that would teach you how to skill stack. These are obstacles that you need the will to overcome. Then there is the most recognized kind of will, the metaphysical will. You get the respect that comes with celebration and reward. You get official representations of your achievement in the form of rewards and trophies. People recognize your achievements, and you are praised for your will. Recognition is a very powerful drive in individuals to act and achieve. The physical will is homeostasis pushed to its peak by willpower. There are a couple of main ways you can apply physical will in everyday life. If you're losing weight, set a daily calorie deficit and go to war. In a war, it's not about individual battles you win, but the overall goal is winning. Some days you may not hit your 300 calorie deficit. Maybe it's 200 calories, or 0, or even negative. But the next day is 300. You might take 2 steps back, but that's after taking 3 steps forward. As long as you're making progress, that's the key. Don't give up. Even if you have to change your entire diet. Maybe you are on keto and switch to Weight Watchers. Maybe you need to reevaluate the can of the diet and find one that's easier to follow. This may mean you'll lose weight more slowly, but you'll keep it off. The can in losing weight is that you're limited in survival if you don't fuel up. So your body has mechanisms to make you a ravenous pig when you don't eat. You lose weight by eating in a calorie deficit, plain and simple. But you lose fat, not muscle, by maintaining enough protein to fuel your muscles every day while cutting calories. I used to think it was controlled starvation, and you have to have the mental will not to give in to the hunger. But I gained all the weight back because I couldn't maintain the diet. Now I've learned it's about staying satiated or eating enough to not feel hungry while still being in a calorie deficit. I couldn't figure out why I was always still hungry until I upped my protein intake. It is important to take your will into consideration while dieting. As you will read, your willpower is like a muscle that can be built and flexed, but, like muscle, does fatigue. Willpower is ultimately a finite resource. We'll discuss the scientific findings of willpower, and then we'll apply it to examples like losing weight. Everyone struggles with willpower. The best way to improve your self-control is by understanding how and why you lose control. Self-knowledge is the foundation of self-control. To succeed, you need to know how you fail, but you have to stay focused on your goal. An example is, you really want to lose weight, but you really want a donut. You need to find your motivation when it matters. This means, because it's about adding and not restricting, you would have a fully nutritious meal with high protein and fiber to satiate yourself and have a donut for dessert. This way, you're not eating just donuts on an empty stomach till you're full, because it will ultimately make you hungry again for not getting enough nutrition like protein and fiber. In this way, willpower is largely the ability to control impulses. To develop self-control, you first need self-awareness. Willpower is about harnessing the power of I will, I want, and I won't. Psychologists understand the majority of our decisions happen automatically, driven by unconscious factors rather than deliberate thought. Rarely do we pause to consider the consequences. Often, we don't even recognize that we're making a choice at all. This means that when your mind is busy, your impulses, and not the ultimate long-term goal, will lead your decisions. Willpower is seen as a biological instinct that evolved to help regulate ourselves. Stress is awful for willpower. Nothing drains willpower more. To increase your willpower, focus on breathing, exercise, getting enough sleep, and relaxing. These will restore your willpower. You can do small things to practice self-control and strengthen your willpower. Relaxation can help you recover from the physical effects of chronic stress or too much self-control. For better willpower, you need sleep. Self-control is like a strategy for resisting temptation. You can't control every aspect of your life or have perfect willpower. Again, willpower is like a muscle that can fatigue, which means you often have to choose your battles wisely. Self-control deteriorates over time and throughout the day. If you need to pause and plan, you are putting your self-control muscle to work. Self-control takes energy. Glucose rejuvenates your willpower because willpower takes a physical toll on your brain. Giving in is not inevitable. It's a choice. You can push past fatigue. Just like with working out, willpower becomes harder to use. Your willpower becomes stronger when you want it. However, when we give in, we have a feeling we've done good, which relinquishes responsibility and allows us to be bad. This is called moral licensing, and the questionable logic tricks us into acting against our interests. Moral licensing is a psychological phenomenon where past behaviors that are perceived as good justify indulgence, undermining willpower. On a diet, this manifests by rewarding a week of clean eating with a binge or bad, which usually means high-calorie, foods. This also materializes as allowing yourself dessert because you didn't have breakfast. What's really happening is the brain is tricking you into seeing discipline as a kind of moral currency that you've earned, when the reality is that you're undoing your progress. Due to feeling positive about regressing your progress, the realization of the false virtue may weaken your resolve with a permission and guilt cycle. To avoid this, you have to frame your choices as consistent actions towards a goal, not transactions that can be leveraged. You have to recognize that one or even a number of healthy meals doesn't license a splurge, just as one workout doesn't improve the physicality of sedentary habits. There is a lot of give and take, because that may make you relapse even harder and binge on your diet, which is why you just let it go. You have to find a delicate balance of being consistent and rewarding yourself strategically in a manner that keeps you motivated to retain that consistency with the diet/goal. Just with like artists, you play the long game where it's consistency over time instead of big short gains. Real willpower relies on sustainability, not negotiation. By trashing the thought of good or bad foods, but rather seeing them as choices, you retain energy for long-term discipline while avoiding self-sabotaging loopholes. An example of moral licensing is your tendency to eat more because you exercised off the calories. The halo effect allows you to indulge by thinking of the virtue, for example, that a cookie is fat-free, or buying more than regular at a discount store. When we change our willpower into a moral measure, being good is permission to be bad. In terms of how your will affects your dieting, you have to enable yourself to make good decisions automatically. That way, you're not consistently testing your willpower so that when you do need it, it's ready and steadfast. How does this manifest? To put it plainly, you shouldn't blow your diet because you made one mistake. If you eat like garbage for the holidays, you just gotta let it go and get back on the horse without punishing yourself through a large calorie restriction. Make sure to encourage yourself. Feeling guilty makes you relapse and eat more. Self-forgiveness is key to staying focused and recovering after a mistake or relapse. Self-criticism is associated with less motivation and leads to comfort coping. You're wrong if you think the path to greater willpower is to be hard on yourself. Self-compassion and forgiveness are associated with better self-control and more motivation, because letting go of guilt makes you stronger, while feeling bad results in giving in. You can find hope through vowing to change. The key to dieting is to do it for internal, personal reasons, like it's healthier or you want to be able to climb a mountain. Then you should change your environment to make it easier to fulfill your will. Keep whole foods in the house. Don't have Oreos on the counter if you can't control yourself. When it comes to dieting, the environment is just as important as willpower. If you keep it out of sight, you won't think about it. Make yourself work to cheat on your diet. Mark Rober puts his Ben & Jerry's in a metal temperature-controlled locked container that has to thaw to gain access, making sure his indulgence isn't just impulse. In general, as an amateur social psychologist, this is what psychologists call FAE, or the fundamental attribution error. This means people have the tendency to overestimate the individual's actions, or will in this case, and underestimate their environment. If I can impart some general wisdom, this would be a FAE, especially when dealing with compassion and empathy. As psychologist Philip Zimbardo said of the famous Stanford experiment, situational forces, or the force placed upon you by the environment, are the most compounding influence humans face. If you change your environment, you change the person. So the next time you think you can't do it or that it's too much, maybe it is. Maybe it's not you. Maybe it's the environment, and it's unreasonable for any human to work, live, or function under such conditions. In this application, like I and many in America have experienced, maybe you can't eat healthy because you're always on the go, which is really an excuse, or you don't have the money because you work a minimum wage job. You have to reevaluate the can. You have to learn about nutritious whole foods and cut something from your budget to pay for the price of convenience. Maybe you can grow food in your backyard or a hydroponic setup in your apartment. I largely see the obesity epidemic as a fault of the food industry seeking more profit by selling us more food, which increases our calories, making us retain more body weight. Concurrently, the food industry has taken out nutrition in calories, so like me, I eat and still feel hungry because the protein and fiber have been stripped from the ingredients for taste, again, to increase the sellability. The result is an obesity epidemic because of the pursuit of profit, market concentration, and unregulated oligopoly. The poor are probably more likely to die younger than the rich because of not meeting the financial burden of being healthy in society. The poor are more likely to be distressed, burdened, and disgruntled, or are at least justified because their financial burden affects their well-being, in other words, mental and physical will. According to Bernie Sanders, 60% live paycheck to paycheck in the United States. As illuminated, it's the environment. The stress most people feel is not only out of their control for the average person, but it's manufactured. This was done intentionally to take away your political and economic representation by the American oligarchy, who are the richest individuals ever. The truth is that this doesn't get resolved by working harder. The solution is to strike until the people are represented equally. Get money out of politics and tax at 99 or 100% after $1 billion. And give it back to the Commonwealth and not what is tantamount to kings economically. For more, visit farminghumans.com. Life is full of compromises. Dieting is a lifestyle change. You have to live the diet. The easiest diet in the world is to count calories. Another way is to set a protein goal with a calorie deficit, which makes you balance getting enough nutrition without going overboard. It will make you eat healthier if you focus on your macros. Once you do start counting calories and getting into the swing of things, you'll find your diet, or foods that you love and want to keep in your repertoire. Then, once you want to maintain your weight, you can eat those foods in the same portions without counting to make it easier. The goal is to have it become a lifestyle, a routine where you don't have to think about it. You just do it, and you become comfortable with that decision. How does can and will work with building muscle? It's the same way you work on losing weight. You work it backwards. One of the first things any good weight loss program will ask is, how much weight do you want to lose? So again, you set the goal. Say you want to look good for a wedding next year and you want to lose 20 pounds. Great. We have the target weight and the time duration. 1 year. That means 20 divided by 12, you have to lose about 1.7 pounds every month. Every pound of fat is 3,500 calories. So 5,950 total calories divided by 30 days in a month. That means you would have to maintain about a 200 calorie deficit each day to reach your goal. The trick is finding a balance of eating well while satiating cravings. The easiest safe diet you can have is to have a 15% calorie deficit while setting a protein goal of at least 150 grams while getting at least 30 grams of fiber. If you hit those macros, most likely you'll lose weight, retain muscle, and feel good enough to maintain it indefinitely. Fueling your body is very important, especially for athletes. We'll assume about 20 pounds again, but this time putting on 20 pounds of lean muscle over a year. So 20 divided by 12 is 1.67 pounds of muscle per month. This time, we need a caloric surplus, which means you need to eat more than your body burns because muscle growth requires extra energy in addition to maintenance levels. The key is understanding that 1 pound of muscle requires 2,500 to 3,000 calories surplus, and we'll assume 2,800 calories for 1 pound of muscle, although it can vary from person to person. To gain 1.67 pounds of muscle per month, you need a surplus of 4,676 calories per month, or divided by 30 days is about 156 extra calories per day beyond your BMR, basal metabolic rate. To recap, you need an additional 156 calories a day consistently over your maintenance level to achieve 20 pounds of muscle growth over a year. Muscles need protein to grow, so you must get enough to maximize growth while not over-consuming calories, even if they are protein, because it will lead to fat storage. It is usually recommended that you get 1 to 1.2 grams of protein per pound of body weight when aiming for muscle building. If you weigh 180 pounds, you need 180 to 216 grams of protein per day and would get 720 to 864 calories from protein, respectively. After you get your protein dialed in, you can divide the rest of the calories between carbs and fats, depending on your personal needs. You should aim for 40 to 50% of your calories from carbs, as they provide energy for workouts and muscle recovery, and 20 to 30% of calories from fats, which are important for hormone production and overall health. So to recap, if your daily muscle gain, including the surplus, is 3,000 calories per day, let's say 864 should come from protein and 2,136 should come from carbs and fats, which will break down into 45% carbs and 25% fats. You'll need 1,350 calories of carbs and 750 calories from fats, respectively, which is 337 grams of carbs and 83 grams of fats. The key is consistency. You should stick with your surplus, track your progress, and adjust as needed. If you're gaining too much fat, dial back the calories. If muscle growth stalls, you can increase your surplus. With weight loss, make sure you are not sacrificing protein and getting enough to maintain muscle mass as you lose weight. With exercise, making sure you have enough glucose can help you regain your willpower. This is why athletes drink electrolyte drinks like Gatorade. Those who have physical will can train mental will and vice versa. Bodybuilding takes years and it teaches perseverance. The can of working out is, am I healthy enough to do the exercise? Do I have that limb? Or is that part of your body injured? Not, I'm too sore. In contrast, the will would be working out while you're sore to still make your gains, meal prepping, showing up for the gym on time, and putting in a full workout until exhaustion. One of the most important aspects of refueling your will that affects both mental and physical is sleep. Studies show that if you get the necessary 8 hours of sleep, you are more productive throughout the day. You also need sleep to grow muscle. Keeping a schedule is an expression of can and will do. Assessing whether you have any commitments can Committing to them, will, and then performing that event, do, is a good way to express the maxim. As we talked about with environmental forces, the can of your diet in America comes down to corporate consolidation. About 90% of food products in the market are owned by 5 companies. The can in dieting in America is realizing that American corporations make food taste good, not healthy, usually by taking out protein and fiber. Navigating the plethora of options and understanding nutrition while budgeting for everyday eating is the will of dieting.